You know, for over half a century, India has been fighting a war that's kinda hidden in plain sight. It's a conflict that's claimed thousands of lives, and while it doesn't always make global headlines, it has absolutely shaped the nation's security. We're talking about the long, bloody insurgency known as left-wing extremism.
And look, this isn't just some fringe issue. I mean, check out this declaration. India's own prime minister called it the single biggest internal security challenge the country had ever faced. That wasn't just talk. It was a wake-up call about a threat that was challenging the very authority of the state. So what exactly is it?
Okay, so at its core, left-wing extremism, or as it's more commonly called Naxalism, is an armed revolutionary movement. It's inspired by Maoist ideology, and its followers, well, their goal is to completely overthrow what they see as an oppressive state. And their primary weapon? What they call a people's war, fought by recruiting and mobilizing some of the most marginalized rural and tribal people in the country. To really understand how this grew into India's biggest internal security threat, we have to rewind a bit. We've got to go back to its beginnings, to a small village that, kind of unexpectedly, gave this entire movement its name.
So, the movement actually gets its name from one single village, Naxal. That's where a peasant uprising in 1967 lit the first spark. Now, while that specific rebellion was put down, the idea behind it, well, that spread like wildfire. Over the next few decades, it caught on all across India's central and eastern states. But the real game changer was in 2004. That's when the two biggest rival factions came together, they merged, and they formed the super-powerful CPI Maoist. And just like that, a scattered movement became a unified, national-level threat.
So why? Why did this ideology find such fertile ground to grow in? This slide really breaks it down perfectly. This wasn't just some abstract theory for people. I mean, imagine you're a tribal farmer, and your land, the land your family has worked for generations, is just taken away. Imagine living in a place with no real school, no clinic, no voice. That's the vacuum the Naxalites stepped into. They showed up where the state was basically absent and offered this powerful, violent, but powerful promise of justice and revolution. So, faced with this escalating crisis, the Indian government realized that a purely military solution was never going to work. It knew it had to fight a two-front war, one with bullets, for sure, but another, just as important, with development. And you can see that two-front approach right here. On one side, you have the insurgents using classic guerrilla tactics, ambushes, IEDs, and using that dense forest cover to their advantage. They basically run their own parallel governments, even collecting taxes through extortion. Now, on the other side, the state's response is, multi-layered. It involves elite commando units like Cobra, that stands for Commando Battalion for Resolute Action, but it also involves a massive push to build infrastructure, things like roads and cell towers to finally connect these remote areas. And crucially, it offers a way out for insurgents through surrender and rehabilitation policies.
All right, so the big question is, has this dual strategy of security and development actually worked? Well, the data from the last decade or so, it paints a very, very clear picture.
And the results are pretty stark. This is the headline number right here. Since the violence hit its peak back in 2010, there has been a staggering 75% reduction in incidents. I mean, that is a dramatic downturn, and it speaks directly to the impact of this sustained, multi-pronged approach.
And this chart really visualizes that retreat perfectly. What once known as the Red Corridor, this huge stretch of land affecting over 200 districts, has shrunk dramatically. Today, the core of the problem is really concentrated in just 45 districts. The insurgency has been seriously pushed back.
But, and this is a big but, the war is not over, not by a long shot. The last major stronghold of the insurgency is the Bastar region in the state of Chhattisgarh. We're talking incredibly dense forests and brutal terrain that make it a natural fortress for the insurgents and a massive challenge for security forces. This is where the fight is still at its most intense.
And that brings us to the war's next phase. Because as the insurgency weakens on the ground, it's doing what any threatened group does. It's adapting. It's shifting its focus from the old battlegrounds to new frontiers.
The crucial thing to get here is that the challenge is evolving. While that physical fight in the forest of Bastar is still very real, a whole new front is opening up online. This idea of cyber Maoism is now a tool for propaganda and recruitment, and there's a new strategic push to spread the ideology in urban centers. The battlefield is no longer just the jungle.
Which leaves us with this final and I think really critical question.
The state has proven it can shrink the physical territory of the insurgency with that combination of force and development. But as the conflict shifts, as it moves from the jungle to the internet, from a shooting war to an ideological one, can that same strategy win the ultimate prize, the final battle for hearts and minds?